Hello friends, welcome. And in this session, I am going to discuss about some of the confusions in KP Astrology, Krishnamurti Paddhati around the Significators, Sublord and Rahu-Ketu. Now, this particular presentation is very important because it makes a very dramatic shift from the usual or the stereotype role of Significator, Sublord and Rahu-Ketu that you have been studying or following in KP astrology for past many years or so. Now this is meant for the advanced KP astrologer, and this is not meant for people who are absolute beginners in astrology. And I'm talking about absolute beginners in astrology, not in KP astrology. So the absolute beginners have to go to Parashari astrology and first start learning the Parashari. And the many of you who have devoted more than a year or so using Krishnamurti Paddhati or the KP astrology and have been analyzing charts. So this particular presentation is meant for you. And there are some confusions in KP astrology about the role of significator, sublord, and Rahu Ketu, and that is what I am going to discuss in this particular video. This is a very important video. If you are a follower of Krishnamurti Paddhati, and you are confused by the role of significator, sublord, and Rahu Ketu, then this particular presentation is meant for you. Now, the in many of my past videos, I have been discussing about the so-called traditional or the stereotype approach that has been laid down in various Krishnamurti's books, and that is what I have been discussing, and that I have been discussing deliberately because the stereotype thing that Krishnamurti has discussed that has its own significance. So you have to learn those things and then get frustrated by those things, and then only this particular presentation is going to move you forward. So first, let's quickly take a look at what I mean by when I say the stereotype principles or the rules that KP books usually discuss. This is an example horoscope, and we are not going to take the Rashi chart because in Krishnamurti Paddhati the Bhav Chalit chart is taken. So we'll have our focus on the Bhav Chalit. Now, when you cast a horoscope or usually cast a horoscope, this is what you do. You have the Bhav Chalit chart, and then you lay down a table of the planet, star lord, and the sublord. And so, just quickly, let's take the example of Venus. Now, Venus is the owner of the third house, and the Venus is in the eighth house. So, we mentioned 3 and 8. And then Venus is in the star of Saturn. So, where is Saturn? Saturn is in the eighth house. So, we mentioned the eighth house, and Saturn is the owner of the 12th house. So, we mentioned the 12th house. And I'm not going to discuss the sublord in this presentation. But I hope that most of you are already familiar with the usual laying down the table of significators using the KP astrology. Now, one of the problems with this approach, the one that you see over here, is that there is a kind of proliferation of the significators for if you have to analyze a particular thing that's going to happen in a person's life or not, and then typically you look at what KP says in terms of what that planet is signifying, in terms of what the houses that planet is doing, or in what kind of star lot it is posited, and then of course the sublord. So let's look at the typical one example, the Venus Rahu Dasha in this particular chart. Now, if this person comes to you and if he or she is going through a Venus Rahu period, and the question is that how this particular period is going to be, Now, if you lay down the chart, then you end up with, the Venus as, like I showed you, 3 and 8. And then by virtue of being in the Saturn star, it also represents 8 and 12. And then further by being in the sublord of Mercury, it again, signifies all these houses. So now you have almost, the 3, 8, 12, 4, 5, 7, 11. So the lot of houses come in focus. 5 or 6 houses already come in focus. If you look at the Venus as the Mahadasha Lord, then you have about 5 or 6 houses in focus. And now, if you look at Rahu, then you are totally confused. Not any house is left. So, pretty much all 12 houses are covered during the Venus Rahu period. So, this becomes a very tough kind of a situation to analyze that what kind of a result this particular person is going to go through during the Venus Rahu period. Since all 12 houses are covered in various degree of significance or various degree of strength, so you assume that this person might go through all kind of things in Venus Rahu Dasha. And if you look at Rahu Ketu, especially in the light of this particular example, then all hell is going to lose break. And all these houses from 1 to 12, they are all covered. And this usually happens because Rahu Ketu takes a special significance in terms of representing the sign lord where they are sitting, and then in terms of being representing the planet that they are conjoined with, or also representing the planet they are aspecting it. So all houses are covered. So, and this is a typical case when you do a stereotype casting of significators in the using the Krishnamurti Paddhati, especially with Rahu Ketu. You will see lot of houses are covered, lot of grounds are covered, and you think that Rahu Ketu Dasha, not only in this horoscope, but in most of the horoscope, is just going to be so dramatic that is going to be good, bad, ugly. Everything is going to happen in Rahu Ketu Disha. Marriage is going to happen. Denial of marriage is going to happen. Divorce is going to happen. Second marriage is going to happen. Getting a new job is going to happen. Firing from the existing job is going to happen. Foreign trip is going to happen. A disease is going to happen. So when you have these kind of list of significator, this is what you end up with. So all this has resulted in some kind of a confusion in Krishnamurti Paddhati. So that is what I want to show you, that in the light of the new research that became popular in 2005, that how these things need to be tackled, how these confusions need to be resolved. Now, first we need to look at the significators and what is the dramatic shift. What is the new theory, the new approach, or the new method that Krishnamurti suggested? You will not easily find this in Krishnamurti's book. And you go through all the Krishnamurti's reader, you will not find anything other than the one that I showed you, where you create these kind of chart and lay down these kind of significators and then scratch your head and you are not able to figure it out that what's going to happen in particular dasha. Now, in once in a while, in some of his books, Krishnamurti has given a hint off and on. It's not in too many places. And where, if you read that carefully, then you sit back and you think what Krishnamurti is, trying to say over here. One example that I want to quote over here, and this is from Krishnamurti's book on transit, and this is on page number 276. Now it might be page number 270 or 280 depending on the year of publication of that book that you have on your hand. But look at this particular statement and you will find this thing appearing in this particular book. Krishnamurti says that no doubt Rahu is an evil sign and can do such harm only when there is no planet in its own constellation. You have to carefully look at this statement, that what exactly it means. It is a very dramatic shift from the usual thing where Krishnamurti says that Rahu is deposited in the star of a particular planet, and this is how it is going to affect. Here it says that Rahu is an evil sign, can do such harm only when there is no planet in its own constellation. Now, just to simplify this, what Krishnamurti is saying is that let's look at this particular chart, and instead of taking Rahu, let's take the example of Saturn and rephrase what Krishnamurti is trying to say. Krishnamurti is, when you rephrase, it says, no doubt Saturn can only do such harm only when there is no planet in Saturn's constellation. So if you look at this chart, Saturn is in the eighth house, so it can do some kind of a negative, or it can give some kind of a bad result. But when you look at this particular line, when there is no planet in Saturn's constellation, are there any planets? Then you ask that, are there any planets in Saturn constellation? And you say yes, Venus is. In this particular chart, Venus is deposited into Saturn's constellation. So what does it mean? That now Saturn cannot do any harm, because Venus is deposited in Saturn's constellation. So now Saturn cannot possibly give the result of the eighth house. I'm going to explain this to you as we kind of go further on this particular confusion and the new method that I'm going to discuss in this book. But before I do that, let me give you some background that the whole, after the death of Krishnamurti, the Krishnamurti's son, the K. Subramaniam and Mr. Hariharan, they started taking care of the Krishnamurti's legacy. And one of the very disappointing thing is that so far, whatever work they have produced is very disappointing. They were not able to create a Krishnamurti's a community around Krishnamurti, though there are worldwide followers, people who are passionate about KP astrology, but both the K. Subramaniam and Harihan, they both failed in creating any kind of community. There is no website, there are no groups, there is no community around the KP followers where all these things can be discussed. And so that's one of the major drawback with both the sons of Krishnamurti. And then most of the books that they have produced after the death of the Krishnamurti, they are more like a recycled version of what Krishnamurti wrote. The printing might be a little bit better, and it's a offset printing and those kind of things, but those are all recycled work. There are no footnotes, there are no explanation, nothing is there. All they have done is just recycle or repack the old stuff. So that way they have not been very helpful. And most of the books that they have brought in the market, they're full of error, they are full of grammatical mistakes, they are full of language mistakes, they are horrible. And this is such a sad story on their part. And especially when you look at I remember long back when I visited Madras, then it was used to be called Madras, and I happened to stumble upon their bookshop, which was in a very upscale road in the Madras, I guess Spencer Road or somewhere. This is a very upscale area, and now they have a couple of more bookstores, all in a very upscale mall or those kind of area. And then some of the books that I have read, that they have published recently, and where they have produced some of the example horoscope, I can see that they have a association with very good people around the world, doctors, physicians, businessmen. These are very leading people, so they don't have any lack of access to good resources, and money shouldn't be a problem, and all these things. They can easily hire people who can do a good proofreading. They can hire some good editors. They can take care of the grammatical and syntax errors, but they don't care. So that's one of the very disappointing affairs. So anyway, Now, in 2005 and 2006, that is what I recall from the top of my mind. One book came out in the market, and the this is a Sublord Speaks. This is in three parts. Sublord Speaks 1, 2, and 3. Now, editor of this book is one gentleman by the name K.M. Subramaniam. Now, Krishnamurti's son K. Subramaniam is not related to K.M. Subramaniam. It seems like K.M. Subramaniam is a direct disciple or was a direct disciple of K.S. Krishnamurti, and he laid down a whole new approach in this book. But when you get hold of this book, again, this book is full of mistakes, wrong horoscopes, incorrect casting, but at least you will have a feel of what kind of new things are being discussed. And that is the whole foundation or the basis of my discussion in this particular presentation, this particular book. So let's move forward. Now, this is the usual, uh, the stereotype or the traditional approach in the Krishnamurti Paddhati. The basic rules. What are the basic rules? A planet in the star of the occupant of a house is stronger than the occupant. The occupant of, I'm sorry, I think I. So, anyway, so the idea is that a planet in the star uh, of a constellation is stronger than the planet residing in a house. And then finally, the third is the owner. You all know about it, all these things. And then for Rahu and Ketu, there are all these special rules that Rahu represents the planet or the when Rahu and Ketu are occupying a sign, then they represent the planet who is the owner of that particular sign. That's the first thing. Second is that if they are conjoined with some planet, then they are going to represent that planet. And third is that when they are aspected by a planet, then they are going to represent that planet also. Now, if you take all these three rules for Rahu Ketu in account, then you end up with what I showed you. Ketu and Rahu representing pretty much everything, even beyond the horoscope. So this is another source of great confusion in the KP astrology. Now the third thing is the sublord. Traditionally, or from the stereotype point of view, we take that stereotype is going to sorry, the sublord is going to decide about the particular matter that we are going to judge, whether marriage is going to happen or not, those kind of thing. And but if you read the Krishnamurti's books, then you will end up in a kind of a confusion whether you have to stop at this particular point, whether you have to stop here and decide that what this Saturn is going to do for Ketu. But time and again, Krishnamurti has used the word significator. So then you think that do you need to go further from this and go to the next step where the sublord itself becomes the significator. And in Krishnamurti's books you will find both kind of examples where Krishnamurti has stopped at this level, and also the example where Krishnamurti has gone beyond this particular level and taken the sublord as the significator. When I say the sublord as a significator, that means for Ketu, Saturn is the sublord, but Saturn is the significator of these houses. Okay. So now another confusion, and there's some kind of discussion I have seen on the internet that whether one has to stop at this particular level or at this particular level, or one has to further go and see if what Saturn signifies. So Saturn signifies, like we have seen, that Saturn signifies Jupiter by being in Jupiter's star. So that's another level of confusion. And all these confusion is brought by Krishnamurti's own publication. There is no clarification and that what need to be done. So let me show you that what is the new paradigm shift, what is the new method that was propounded by Mr. K. M. Subramaniam in this particular book. Now, there's a lot of grounds to cover because this is a very dramatic shift from what you might have learned in the traditional KP astrology. So, I'm going to be a little slow over here and I'm going to be a little repetitive. So, don't get bored because this particular thing has to gel in your mind that what new method was propounded and how you can use this new method to your advantage. So, like I said, the four things, the four confusion we have is about the one is about the significator, second is about the Rahu Ketu, third is about the sublord. So, what I'm going to do is that I'm not going to discuss the sublord over here. We'll do it in a sequel. I'll create a video. Like I said, there are so many things to absorb and digest. So let's go a little slow. And now with this one particular word that I mentioned over here, since I've been trying to share my thoughts with some of my friends who are KP enthusiasts, and I was trying to teach them the new thing, new concept. So this particular word, that is what we settled for. That instead of significators, let's use the word hijacking. So I'm going to explain you what it particularly means. This particular word, is meant in this context. Now, typically, I am also not going to discuss about the Ketu and Rahu because they have special rules. So we'll discuss in some other video. Now, let me just take these two planets, the Venus and Sun. Now, the typical or the stereotype understanding of the in terms of the role of significators for Venus is 3 and 8. Why we say 3 and 8? Because we have Taurus over here and Venus is in the 8th house. So we say 3 and 8. And then Venus is in the star of Saturn. So Saturn is in the 8th. So we write 8th. And the Capricorn sign over here is owned by Venus. So we write 12. And this cusp chart is missing the Aquarius sign. That's become an intercepted sign. So Saturn here only signifies these two houses. And sublord we'll discuss in the other issue. So now Venus typically signifies these kind of houses. Okay, but if you look at this particular rule, no doubt Rahu can do such a harm only when there is no planet in its own constellation. So we are going to apply this rule over here and we'll say okay, Venus can give the result of 3 and 8 provided there is no planet in Venus star. Provided there are no planets or there is no planet in Venus star. Now, if you look at this particular column, the star lot column, you find that Sun is already in the Venus star. So it basically means that now Venus cannot give the result of the third and the eighth house. This is one very significant thing that you have to understand over here. Normally, we have been thinking that Venus will give the result of the third and the eighth house. But no, Venus will not give the result of the third and the eighth house. So why? Because Sun is in the star of Venus. So in a way, Sun has hijacked or Sun has taken away the result of Venus that Venus was supposed to give over here. Okay. So that is what it is meant by. That's why I use the word hijacking. So Sun has hijacked the result of Venus that was supposed to appear over here. So Venus will not give these kind of the result of the third and the eighth house. So now if you look at the list of uh, the the houses that Venus was supposed to represent, and typically it was representing 3 and 8. Now 3 and 8 is gone. Venus is only giving the result of 8th and the 8th and the 12th house. Let's look at Sun. Sun is in 10th. So since this is not a complete list of significators, so let's assume that there are no planets in Sun sign, and so Sun is going to give the result of the 10th house. Take this example that will clarify you more over here. Suppose, let's say Mercury was in Sun's star. Okay. In that case, the Sun will not give the result of the 10th house. So 10th is gone. Usually we think that Sun is going to give the result of 10th house. No. The Mercury has hijacked the result of this particular significance of the Sun. Look at the Moon. Moon is giving the result of the third house and the sixth house. And the Moon is also in its own star. This is usually called as the self significator. In some of my videos, I have hinted that the self significator plays a very important role in Krishnamurti Paddhati. So Moon is going to give the result of the third house, and Moon is going to give the result of the sixth house. And since Moon is in its own star, so Moon is also going to give the result, or I would say the this third and sixth result is reinforced. But there is a small, caveat over here. Suppose, let's assume that Moon was not here and Moon was here, just as an example, and that Sun was here. No, not this. Let's assume that Moon was not in this house and Moon was, let's say, in this house. Okay, and there was some other planet in this house. Let's say Mercury was here. Okay, so now what happens is, since Mercury is here, third we are going to omit the third because we removed Moon from the third house. So normally now you think that Moon is going to give the result of the sixth house, but this is not true since Mercury is already there. So Moon is not, though Moon is in its own house, but still Mercury is not going to give the result of the sixth house. Okay, so that is what is meant by the the self significator. So these are some of the concepts that is the part of the new paradigm shift in KP Astrology, which was propounded by K.M. Subramaniam in his book. And I know there's a lot of ground to cover, and it might become a little confusing if I try to overload you with so many ideas. But I was just trying to give you a glimpse of that the whole confusion around the significators, too many significators covering all 12 houses. One, how to fix that. Second, the Rahu Ketu. If you take Rahu Ketu's aspect, sign lord, and the conjunction, then you end up with so many different houses covered by Rahu Ketu that you think in Rahu Ketu's Dasha everything is going to happen, all positive, negative thing. But usually, if you look at your own horoscope, if you ask your relatives, Rahu Ketu Dasha might just have passed like any other normal, other planet. And third is the role of the sublord. So the in this particular presentation, my idea was to just give you a little bit idea that there is some kind of a dramatic new approach in Krishnamurti Paddhati, and that's worth looking into. I follow this thing and I apply in some of the horoscope and I get good results. But I'm going to discuss the pros and cons, and I'm going to do some sequel. I will not be able to cover this particular thing in just one part, so maybe two or three videos, and I will supplement those videos with some of the practical examples. So that is what is in this presentation. Do write your comments that if you are able to grasp what was presented in this video, what were your confusions related to this particular video, so that when I prepare the next video, I don't know how much time it's going to take me, but I'll do that. So then I'm going to cover all those confusion and try to make it as simple as user friendly so that you understand the concept, that what are the new concepts. So thank you so much for watching this particular presentation, and do leave your comment. Thanks.